Welcome to Business Connection. I'm Liz Spencer. We have a great guest in studio with us today. It's Ray Pillar, and he's president and owner of Molly Maid of Aurora and Naperville area. Welcome, Ray. Now, tell me a little bit about Molly Maid. It's a franchise. Tell me a little bit about that.
That is correct. In 2003, my wife Martha and I started the franchise. So that means we've been in business for 11 years, and it's been quite a run.
How did you decide to go with a franchise business?
That's an interesting question, and that I'd say a year and a half prior to opening the franchise, I did a lot of studying to see what was the best direction for me to take after being laid off. And part of that study, I learned that approximately, and this is of course at that time, 80% of franchises succeed as opposed to any other business, which only about 20% succeed.
Wow.
So that very much impressed me, and I started looking at a lot of franchises. And the Molly Maid franchise at that time seemed to pop out, although I was interested in more of a handyman type franchise, and because that's where a lot of my skills are, you know. But the gentleman who was trying to sell me franchises, you know, said, you really need to look at Molly Maid. And I said, well, I'm not really interested in that type of franchise, but he insisted. So in 2003, early 2003, because we started the franchise late in 2003, my wife and I visited Ann Arbor, where the Molly Maid headquarters is at.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, I don't know if that's an omen or what, but that was the day that the electricity went out on the East Coast, and it went all the way to Ann Arbor West.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
So our welcoming, well, we stayed in the hotel by candlelight, ate by candlelight, and then the following morning we went to visit the franchise, and it was quite interesting. They were very apologetic, of course. They couldn't give us a true representation of the franchise simply because there was no electricity, but at that time we still felt very welcoming, and you know, they gave us what they could, and of course invited us back. So on the trip back, I felt very welcome. It's very unusual. I had visited other franchises, and a lot of them are, you know, by the numbers. You know, they give you all the specifics about the franchise, and it's very, very businesslike. With the Molly Maid, it was more about the people, and making me feel welcome as a potential owner, and I like that very much. And of course, they had a benevolent association as well, which was one of the things Martha and I really wanted to do, is to give back to the community we were serving in.
That's awesome. And when choosing Molly Maid, and the owner was talking to you, he gave you a piece of advice, which I thought was really good, that we talked about off camera. Tell me a little bit about that piece of advice. What did he ask you?
The other owners? Yes. Well, part of my due diligence was to actually contact other owners, and because you know, obviously I'm investing my life savings into a business. So I talked to 5 current owners.
Wow.
And I also visited, I think, 3 of them to see what the, you know, how they were running their business, and just talk to them face to face. I was very much impressed with what I saw. And then I also called 5 former owners. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm surely going to get the truth here. You know, people are going to tell me what it was really like. And I was really surprised, because they simply said that they didn't want to do the business anymore. They were undercapitalized, or it just wasn't for them. But none of them blamed the franchise for any problems that they caused. This, of course, impressed me as well.
So when you were thinking of going with Molly Maid as your franchise, another piece of advice you were given was that you would be giving to people would be to be overcapitalized, right? So tell me a little bit about that. So what piece of it, really critical piece of advice, is that?
Anybody who's trying to sell you a franchise is going to tell you the bare minimum what you need to start that franchise, and that's reasonable. I don't care what franchise you're trying to buy. They want to sell you a franchise, so they're going to give you the bare numbers. But people forget that there are rough times, and there are unforeseen circumstances, like do you have enough money to pay your own mortgage and put food on the table, and things like that. So I always recommend anybody who talks to me that they double or even sometimes triple the amount of money that the franchise says you need. And that way, because you don't really want to invest all the money you have, come to a point where you run out of money and you have to give up all that money.
Right.
Because you don't have a few dollars more.
Right, right.
You know.
Well, and you received another piece of advice about when you were trying to choose between like an automotive and a Molly Maid. And he asked you, do you want to do or do you want to oversee or something like
Exactly.
that? Tell me about
that. When I was choosing between different types of franchises, and he was insisting that I look at the Molly Maid franchise, he says, well, do you want to work in the franchise or on the franchise? And of course that resonated with me a lot because a little background, my grandfather was an entrepreneur when he came over, over the ocean, and my father was an entrepreneur, and I took a slightly different route. I really didn't, listen to that,
right.
But I had all the information that they were, giving me all these years, and I think that at that time it really rang true that yes, I want to work on the business. I'm not the type of person that, if I had like a handyman type operation, I'd probably be out in the field every day, pounding a hammer and sawing and stuff like that. Whereas now I get to use my entrepreneurial skills and work on the business and help it grow.
Well, and I think that's a really great question to ask yourself, period. If you want to work in it, or do you want to guide it? And so,
exactly.
and it comes at different times in your life when you want to do that.
Yes.
Going back a little bit to the Miss Molly Foundation, this year was the year that you handed over the largest check. Tell me about that.
That is correct. Every year since we started, we've handed over a check to Mutual Ground in Aurora. But this year was, of course, the biggest check. We've consistently given more every single year that we've been in business, and we're very proud of that. And the very fact that we can give back to the community the things that that we need to.
That's awesome, and that to me is just how business should be run and business should be done. So, Ray, thanks for stopping by and sharing with us your story of how you chose Molly Maid and what you do with Molly Maid. It's been just a pleasure to meet you.
It's my pleasure as well.
We'll be right back with more Business Connections. Stay tuned.